Hi, this is a brief introduction to the ProWorkflow API. First thing I'd suggest you do is to go to api.proworkflow.net/documentation. This has an overall guide to the API and some really useful tips to get you started, as well as some more detailed information about how to build your apps and set up the integrations. So first thing to know is that the API is using RESTful principles, and it also uses JSON. So what that means is it uses get, put, post, and delete requests, and it uses a JSON rather than the XML format which you might have used if you'd used one of our previous APIs. Every time you use the API, the base that you need to use for your URL is https://api.proworkflow.net. So previously you would have been using your account URL /API v2. Now everything starts off with this simple base here. In terms of authentication, you need to provide your API key. If you're not sure what that is, just get in touch with our support team. And you also need to use basic authorization. So that means you need to be using your username and password. And if you're not sure how to, again, set that up, do reach out to us and we can get you started on that as well. I would encourage you to work through most of the documentation that's included here. It explains how things like the permissions work, what kind of error code you'll get back, depending on the permissions that might not be available for that user, and also runs through some useful bits, things like date formats that we use in there, the concept of me. So this is an easy way for you to kind of reference the user that's making a request, and some information around rate limiting and some further details here on the record limits. So useful to know that we do limit you to 5,000 records by default, but we do have paging options. So if you do need to go over that, it's very easy to get 1 page, 2 page at a time, and to pull back a subset of records. So there's also a getting started section in here. So again, I'd encourage you to work through this, particularly if you haven't used an API before. And this goes through, again, a bit of detail, gives you some links to some testing tools. So if you're just getting started, this would be a good way to debug your own code and to make sure that you're spinning requests in the right way. And then there's also some examples here of making get and search requests, runs through how the fields and the paging options use, and we also give you details on the post, put, and delete requests as well. So all of that's covered in there. If you go into the diving deeper, there's some more advanced concepts, so things like JSON-P, CORS, e-tags, which again we'd encourage you to use. This is a good option to reduce the sort of bandwidth and improve responsiveness. So what this will let you do is if you make a request and then you need to make the same request later on, you can send an e-tag, and if nothing's changed, you'll just get back a 304 code, and you know you don't need to get all of that data again. Another couple of really useful bits in here is we've got webhooks now. So this is a new feature in API version 3. So this means that you can actually set up your own code, and when something happens in ProWorkflow, say a project has been added or a message has been sent, we can actually make a request to a site that you're hosting, and you can then take some action based on that as well. And the last thing to mention here is we also have custom API fields. So if you need to store data in the API that doesn't exist in ProWorkflow, then there's a way to do that. So in this example, you could add, say, date of birth, but you could also use this to store, say, any type of information, say a particular industry, anything like that that you want to attach either to a contact, company, a project, quote, invoice, etc. So once you've gone through that, the next place I would suggest you look is we can go to api.proworkflow.net/calls. Now this details all of the calls that are available. So this is split up by the type of information, so companies, contacts, events, and then you've got each of the individual calls. So in this case, this is just looking at the company's get call. So this is how you'd get a list of companies. And what you see here is a list of all of the parameters that are available. So the main one that's shared amongst all of the get calls is this fields parameter. So this lets you determine what information you want to pull back. And then there's several optional parameters. So most of these are filters. So there's an awful lot of filters here. So again, do make use of these because it'll really reduce the amount of information you're getting back and save you a lot of heavy lifting. So anything from basic search through to, say, whether the contact companies are pending, and you've got tag IDs, you've got the company type, and so on and so forth. You can also look at the post data here. So this is if you are adding a company, and we've included some sample data here. So this shows you just a very basic example of adding a single company or adding multiple companies. So again, would encourage you to work through this. The next step, and the other thing we make available to you, is an actual dashboard. So this looks very similar. The difference here is that this is actually wired in to an account. So you can go into the configuration, you can add your API key, username and password, and you can then make API requests as well as seeing what's available. So the only thing I'd point out here before you use this is wired up, so if you put in your actual live API key and you go and make some changes in here, they will affect your account. So what we suggest there is if you are just experimenting, want to get a bit of a feel for the API and what's possible, let us know. We can set up a sandbox account for you, and that way any changes that you make then will just take place just in that sandbox. So there you go, that's a new API. If there's any questions, then do feel free to just reach out to us. We'd love to help you get started, and be really interested to see what you guys can come up with.